how are you distributing this content into this search everywhere aspect to make sure that they're seen on social media, their paid ads, their organic views, their AI views? Like, how are you able to navigate the complexity of really broadcasting your customer?
I think you got to find out which avenue is going to work for them the best to get that conversion. And then when they start making more money, especially when you're talking about smaller and medium-sized companies, once they start converting and they're starting to really trust you and they're starting to make money, then move into the other aspects of other types of marketing that you can do for them.
How do we start to get some eyeballs in different areas? And it just became a part of our workflow to turn like a long-form blog post into 30 short-form pieces of content across different social media platforms, or just content platforms in general. And then the battle became, how do we make them unique?
Focus on what works, double down in those areas. Don't go too wide, because mass distribution could mean just a lot of wasted efforts with just a lot of thin metrics, whereas focusing on the few platforms that really work and that resonate with where your audience is, I think are definitely key.
All right, welcome to another episode of SEO On Air. Today, I'm joined by three founders who are tackling SEO from different angles, but with one shared goal: making it smarter, faster, and more accessible. Today with us, we have Bryan Williamson from Spider Now. He brings a deep technical background, connecting SEO performance with coding and site speed. Michael Ramirez from SearchRPM focuses on making marketing affordable and measurable for small businesses and entrepreneurs. And Cory Young from BBC Interactive blends strategy and creativity, emphasizing how content distribution is just as important as creation. So together we're diving into how SEO is evolving from AI workflows, client communication, and the balance between automation and authenticity, which has really been a fun topic that we've had on the podcast recently. Bringing the first question in so we can have a chance to hear from all of you. A lot of agencies are still treating SEO separate from development and marketing. It's almost seen as a separate service. Talking to all of you, there was seemed to be some technical knowledge that you all had that kind of helped bridge it. So I want to hear from all of you how you're bridging marketing, pay-per-click, SEO, content creation, all into what SEO is evolving to, which is like a search everywhere optimization. Tell us how you're bridging SEO into the world of marketing today.
I'll start. So what we honestly initially did, sort of from day one at BCC, is realize, like you said, it's search everywhere optimization. I actually started in pay-per-click at my first job, so I already had that background, and then just seeing how many people were taking what they spoke or saw about on social and typing it into the Google search bar, and we realized that SEO wasn't necessarily singularly focused keywords anymore. It was really like an amalgamation of everything, from every channel, and just making sure that we wanted to get in front of our clients, customers, and our customers at the right time, obviously in the right spot, aka Google, with the right kind of content. So whether that was like a blog post, a case study, or whatever it may be, we started to realize that it wasn't just do keyword research, find like red running shoes, and then stand up a product category page. It was a lot more taking what people are saying inside of social media, Reddit, Quora, etc., and utilizing that to formalize and fine-tune our content strategy from an SEO standpoint.
Yeah, so I've been working in this industry for quite a while. I actually started really early in my career. So I started work on marketing in 1998. I'm actually old, so I'm not that young. But I learned that through the times, when we first started, everything started about, you could keyword spam, cloak, do all that fun stuff. And as you go along, you learn that relevancy really is what it's all about. To me, that relevancy is the key to everything. Relevancy is, what's the main focus of the page, your ads, the quality of the keyword going towards what you're focusing on. Now, we obviously don't do a lot of keyword these days since the Mavon update, but user intent kind of works the same way, just in a different spectrum, in my opinion. We do a lot of mixing of marketing and coding. Coding is very important for what we do with getting somebody out there properly, whether you're looking at schemas or you're looking at page performance. Page performance is very important, technical SEO. We designed the software at SpiderNow for that reason, because we wanted people to be able to quickly fix a lot of the issues that they have. And so we do a lot of work with technical SEO on page performance, to be able to help people get to the proper quality that they need to get to the next level. So as we go along, when we seeing these companies that are coming through, it's amazing to see how many different aspects of companies, whether it's a mom and pop store or you go up to very large companies that haven't really even started the basics. And so when we get in there and we start working with a company, one of the first things we do is we literally just start taking apart how they're actually coding, how the communication between what they're coding and what rules that they're using to match with marketing, if that's even working correctly. And if it is, then we start taking the next level.
That I'm going to jump in here and say, before we were even able to go to start the recording, Michael mentioned something about the complexity of alignment between a customer and the marketing agency themselves. And the technical knowledge is definitely one of those gaps.
Yeah.
SEO, like the timing of SEO seems to be another huge gap. Like when they learn their knowledge about SEO. Michael, I'm going to kind of switch it back over to you with altering the question just slightly. How do you approach trying to bridge that gap in communication with your customers? That education aspect seems to be a super complicated thing that agencies handle differently. And I'll open that same question up to the rest of you once Michael gives us his response.
No, yeah, that's a great question. I mean, education is always going to be an important, factor when it comes to SEO, explaining what it is, how it works, best practices. I find that what really resonates the most with small businesses, and which is our primary customers, we have to simplify things. We have to kind of speak their language. And what it really comes down to is, I don't talk about canonical tags or robots.txt or llm.txt. I don't say any of that. I say we're going to create a strategy that's revolved around your customer. We understand your audience, their needs, the solution, and then SEO is just a channel that we're going to access, one of the channels that we probably use to access and find your customers based on the solution that you have to their problem. And then there's the best practices underneath that, which they pay for. But that's why they hire us, because we explain it to them in ways that they understand. And we say that SEO is going to be one of the ways that we're going to reach their customers. And most customers heard of SEO, but they don't understand what it is, how it's done. And I think a lot of agencies out there, I would say this: the customers that have come to us have used an SEO agency, and they've showed them these crazy 3-page audits, and the customers typically feel overwhelmed because they don't understand any of the items on that audit. And what we say is like, okay, let's look at your audience. Do you have the pages? Do you have the proper content that speaks to them? Okay, we're gonna enhance that. We're gonna find out how your customers are searching for those specific products or services online. We're gonna use those keywords. We're gonna add those to those pages. We're gonna add supporting content around that, so that way your audience and search engines know that you are an expert, subject matter expert on the subject or in this area, and search engines start to trust you. We built some nice PR around that. We tell people that you're an expert in this field. We get some, and it's called backlinking, or we start generating a PR campaign. And then that starts to really resonate with them. It's like, if you have a business, even offline, you have to spread awareness. And it's like, we're just spreading awareness online, creating context about what your business is and who you're serving. And I think that goes a long way for these customers. It's just explaining, talking to them in their language, and not in our sometimes industry jargon.
It's funny. You could feel that he caught his rhythm in his sales pitch there, where he knew what he was saying because he said it to the customers enough. That was fun to see. Corey, Brian, how are you guys approaching bridging that gap with your customers? Or yeah, do you have any feedback based on what he said too? Actually, I'd love to hear how you compare.
Well, I think it comes down to who you're actually working with. Like if you're working with a lot of smaller companies and medium-sized, that the approach does work a lot. But then if you get to larger companies where they already have set teams, sometimes it can become quite a challenge because you're dealing with people that might be doing the marketing and coding backwards, and you're just sitting there saying, "I need to make these changes," and immediately you get combative. It's very combative because they're like, "Well, now I look like I'm doing job preservation." So I think there's a fine line with how to explain what you're doing with non-technical, but sometimes you have to go slightly technical. At least that's my experience. Like, if I see a large company and I'm starting to run into some of these problems, then if you get to the right person, you can show them basic stuff like, page speed reports, or, hey, you have no, you look, your page speed is off by a long shot, or you have no rich snippets working in there, or you're not even doing schema at all. You're going to have a really hard time jumping right into AI and some of these other things you're doing. And so you start giving them these reports, like even SEM rush reports. You can start showing them like, hey, your toxicity level is really high. You might want to start looking at disavowing some of this stuff. And so you start looking at that. Maybe you're not going technical, but sometimes reports that flash red and, hey, alert, or, hey, I need to fix this, sometimes is enough to get that needle moving with some of these companies.
It's like a job interview then, huh? Like you got to know what position you're interviewing for. Like, is this the guy that's the technical guy, or is this like a personality fit, and you're not supposed to dive into the technology? That's interesting. Corey, I think you were about to say something. I jumped in.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm right there, kind of with them both in terms of some people will never understand the technical elements and don't care to. It's just like, are we getting what we paid for, or are we getting what we're looking for ultimately? Whether that's leads, revenue, etc. And then you have another side of the fence who like know a little bit about SEO, and you can talk to them on a more technical level. They might not know the ins and outs, the way that we do, but they can at least follow along. And so you can talk about more detailed, like one of my clients, she is the like director of e-com and digital at a cannabis agency, and she previously did SEO at her other job. So she'll get in Google Search Console with us and like look at index pages, why certain pages are not being indexed, do sort of like test crawls with the Google bot and things like that. So it's very much like two different kind of schools of thought, and you meet them kind of where they are. Some people never want to hear the word robots.txt, and then other people are in there like disallowing directories with you in the robots file.
So it's interesting when you talk about like the personalities. Like one thing that comes up as a common trend is just how important communication is. But navigating communication is so personality based for agencies that it tends to be you work with who you click with the most, right? I think even as I'm shopping for like an agency for myself, I have never been too deep in the actual fulfillment of SEO. Like I've worked with agencies at a pretty high level. So if I had to change any of those things, I would not want to be part of that conversation. I wouldn't know how to be valuable in that conversation. So I think it's fascinating talking to agencies that like you guys really do have a difference between like Brian and Michael, the two you touched on are just so completely different. Michael, I think I've worked with more small and medium businesses. So like I have a lot of sales analogies we use in those types of situations. But Brian, if you brought in a sales analogy to someone that was deep into tech, they would be insulted. And you have to navigate it in a completely different way. That's pretty fascinating.
Well, it's interesting to see how many companies that are extremely large, we're talking, millions and billion-dollar worth, net worth, and value, I should say. And they have teams out there that they've hired that have no understanding of like even remotely good technology. So like one of the things that I run across is if they're hiring somebody that's running the tech for a company and they only know something like, obviously I'm making an example, like Ruby on Rails or whatever, and they don't know how to do any other type of coding, even advanced. Well, then, like one company I'm dealing with right now, it's a very large company, and they just bought an out of the box CMS system because the guy knew how to use that type of software. Well, that software only will take them so far. And so you have to sit there and explain to them, like, you can't just take it out of the box and say that it's going to work. You have to modify that code in there so you're making it work with the actual layout that you need of the page itself. So, if you're designing a page that has, the top, the H tags, and you want your H2, the basics, but these things aren't implemented, you got to show them and convince them that, hey, you need to make these changes or we can do it for you, or you're going to have a really hard time really trying to rank or get yourself moving through any type of marketing on that you're trying to do.
I think you bring up a great transition. Like what you said transitions really well into our next question. I'm going to move into the next question here. A little storytelling too to set it up. But like one thing I've seen recently on like YouTube was there's a content creator that talked about the fear of everyone using the same tools to create all their content for whatever they're doing, and creating these AI tools are going to create clips based on whatever coding tells them that this is like potentially a viral moment, whether it was a big smile or whatever else goes on. And he said everyone's content is inevitably going to look the same once everyone adopts AI tools that start creating content that is the same. And the least path of resistance to producing that content is, I need to do a YouTube video every single day, send this all live for me. There's a balance in AI use and like modern SEO workflows. And I want to hear from you guys how you're navigating that balance. Like how much are you really adopting AI in your workflows, and how much do you think you need to hang on to the creativity that lets you be, let's say, outside of that AI content box that's going to be created overall?
Well, I think if you're using AI to create your content, if you're very specific, in your industry in a certain area that you're at, you can like I've seen people trying to use the AI, but I don't think AI is always going to give you exactly the results you're looking for. You're looking for your user intent, you're looking for the balance, you're looking for the main subject or service of your page, and then all the subcategories below. Well, what your products may be very similar to other companies, but you might hold very specific niches in those industries. And so if you just start to use AI, you start losing the identity of your company. So, I know a lot of companies that will use AI and write the content, and then they'll just go in there and modify it. I don't find any problem with that. If you're going to say, hey, give me some kind of foundation to build off of, yeah, that's fine. But you really need, honestly, you need to go in there and write it specifically for your company, because, again, you're borrowing from everybody and what they do well, but you have to really focus on what you do well the most.
Yeah, I agree with that. Even utilizing AI, I think it's utilizing AI is cool as far as like getting past writer's block or giving a foundation, like you said, Brian. I often find that if I do use it, I'll go back and give it direction to refine whatever the output was to sound more like me or sound more like my client. Like this clearly sounds like it was written by an emotionless robot, or this clearly sounds like it was written by something trying to mimic a human instead of being a human. There's just little ticks, I think, when it comes to content creation, written content creation, that requires an actual human to go in and edit or refine exactly what the output is, as opposed to a copy paste job and thinking that nobody's going to be able to detect that this was just like not really written with any care, if that makes sense.
No, I actually agree with that, because like in ChatGPT, you can go in there and you can create your profile to give a sample of your writing so it follows the same behavior and style that you have. But I've tried that before and looked at it, and it really doesn't match who I am. It really does not. And I always go back to it. It's like when you're talking about a product or service, everybody's going to be completely different, especially the niches that you're focusing on. So you start kind of lose it in translation when you do that. So even if you can get ChatGPT or anybody to rewrite your content to match your behavior and personality, it still is not going to be the same. To me, there's a very big difference between it because it's going to pick and choose the words that you're not very common to writing.
Yeah. I definitely could see. I mean, both points as well. I mean, there's a lot I could take away from that, and like what we're doing as well. I think we're I'm looking at it like in two ways, particularly one that we're actually using. One way we're using already like within our workflows, and then two we're kind of experimenting with to see how we could tailor some of our content to get hyper targeted to our clients. The first area I really like where we're using AI. I'm pretty sure most agents, I mean, both, probably both of you are using, or all of us. We use it for a lot of the data and intelligence. I think like tools like, I don't work for them or we use them, but like Surfer, they do, a pretty good job. And there's other tools as well. They're having a group, they're always looking at AppSumo for deals and stuff for a cheaper version or variations. But it scrapes a lot of information. It gives you the data. It tells you what your competitors are, how many, like let's just say like what type of terms they're using, the semantics, how to build context within your content. It gives you a nicely formed content layout based on data that comes like directly from Google and other APIs and sources from Google. So the way we're using our workflow to generate content is to get the intelligence, so that way we create content that's competitive whenever we launch it. We still have to use that data and give it to a writer, because the writer ultimately knows the brand, they know the client, they've had like an intake form, we've had a questionnaire the client fills out about the specific product or service. So we layer intelligence, the data that we're able to pull from tools, and then actual writers that actually know the brands and put that together, and we create some good content as a result of it. I also think different tools, like obviously different things that we want to put on a page, like images or videos. We look at other tools like SEMrush who allow us to understand what type of SERP data or SERP content is showing up, videos, FAQs, and all that good stuff. So that's how we craft our content. That's really around that first point of using these tools or AI to provide intelligence. The second thing we're doing is building our own AI to do a lot of that market research for us around understanding the brand. I feel like with the tools out there using ChatGPT or you name your AI, it is pulling a lot of similar information. It's giving recommendations over and over again. It's kind of like a copy paste. And what we're doing is building out multiple agents to better understand brands that will allow us to create a crafted SEO strategy and even a marketing strategy if ads are involved. Meaning, we want to understand like who the brand is. It scrapes the website, builds context, understands their audience, who they're targeting. If they have brand assets in Google Drives, then we pull that information too and just collect this data and create a brand profile along with the customer intake profile. So everything that we have to do on a manual basis, we're experimenting with automating this using AI to better understand the brand, so that way we could craft content that's tailored towards the specific company, right, who we're marketing towards. And then all the rest comes into play, the data, all that good stuff, the keywords, and then we layer it on top of that. And so, in my opinion, what we're thinking, the thesis is that, or the expected result is that we have crafted content. We're able to pull the intelligence that everyone else is able to use. We're able to craft a strategy that's specific to the brand based on their own information, their own brand guidelines.
That branding is a complicated part of differentiating yourself today. I think Bryan touched on it a little bit. Like you're having to create a unique personality that stands out. I think if I was trying to start a company today and I started as like SEO providers, I would sound like every SEO agency that's ever existed. And there's a way of like standing out from the group now by creating a unique personality. I think my mind even came to like working with a doctor. When I work if I try to find a doctor I want to work with, I know that there's some that are going to approach it in very different medical ways. And I'm almost searching for that nowadays rather than just looking for the closest doctor. I might look for like a doctor that handles things in a more, like maybe I want less medicine. Maybe I'm looking for a specific medicine. And I'm looking for content that almost tells me this doctor is going to be doing it for me and not just telling me that they're a doctor. I guess I expand the question a little bit here on how are you able to extract that information from your customers in order to even get something that's unique for them? Because I find that most companies don't necessarily have that unique piece yet. They're still trying to figure out what makes them different. Is that something that you guys, all of you, how are you hurdling that? That seems like a very complicated part of running an agency.
I can hit on that just a little bit. Just stemming off of like how we're experimenting with that. Well, I think a lot of businesses, they do have a lot of information, either brand guidelines or stuff that's like on drives, what have you. But I know that's like a further step. I think one is just intake forms and how we the questions that we got to ask the company. If they just have a website like most small businesses do, they'll have a 5-page website. It's not going to tell us much about how to craft a marketing strategy from a 5-page website, right? So what we have to do is what I like doing is recording these calls on one of these, and using something like Otter AI to record the call. Build a profile using their transcript, using AI to help better understand the company and brand. But it comes down also to the questions that we're asking and how we have to differentiate them.
I was going to ask that actually. I'm going to narrow the question down a little bit and ask it more direct here. Are there questions that you're using that really force the customer to open it up? Because I'd be curious to have other agencies hear how you're phrasing those questions that you feel like force the customer to bring something unique out of themselves.
Well, it'd be a pretty hard sell if you have 5 competitors in the same area who do exactly the same thing for the exact same price. That's going to be a pretty tough sale. So, I mean, I kind of look at it as if you're looking at going to an investor, right? Investors looking at investing into your business, and they're like, well, what makes you different than the people that are already out there right now? So you're like, well, I have to explain to them the reason I want you to invest in me is because we have this very unique concept that would make it worth your while to invest because we can make money. I kind of think the same way for local companies. If you have 5 companies that are doing the same thing, then what's different? So you want to be able to separate yourself and differentiate yourself between your competitors, because if you're not, then you're going to have a hard time selling your product. So I think when you do that, some avenues you can go with is, maybe showcasing. I mean, it sounds simple, but showcasing the differences in your galleries. Galleries will show that, hey, my product looks much nicer than my other 4 competitors because we did this, or we are in a niche market because we only focus on higher value type of clients, where this one might go, well, I want somebody that's not so higher value, and I want somebody that just an everyday person doing this for their home, for example. So there are ways that you can differentiate that, but I think I would approach it the same way like you would an investor. You're never going to get an investor to invest in your company if you're exactly the same as your competitor. So if you're going to do that for your product or service, you got to be able to differentiate that, or you're going to be struggling and you're not going to go very far.
I like that. The investor side of it's fascinating, thinking about the customer investing in you, but also you investing in the customer. Like if you don't have anything that I can make stand out or be special, why would I bring you on as a customer right now? Like you're going to be nothing but a problem potentially for me because you have nothing to market.
Yeah.
Well, I like looking.
Not that you'd want to tell them that, but
Well, I like looking for a niche in the market. When I'm working with a customer, I'm like, well, you're selling the same product. So tell me what makes you different. What makes you sellable? What are you doing with your clients that people come back to you and say, I want you versus somebody else? There's your niche. It could be just a certain aspect of the market. It could be that you're doing something better. Maybe you're using better quality products, and maybe you might be a little bit higher. But if you can showcase that, maybe you could get people to convert better. So I think every client has something that they do better or worse than everybody else. But to me, you're looking for that uniqueness that makes that niche that says, this is my conversion, and then focus on that conversion.
Okay, so we have the content creation piece. We're talking about being unique content, making something that's like really valuable to share. And the next question works really well for the conversation and how it's flowed. You have this now. The customer says, I want to invest in you as a marketing agency because I think you're going to help me. How are you distributing this content into this search everywhere aspect to make sure that they're seen on social media, their paid ads, their organic views, their AI views? Like, how are you able to navigate the complexity of really broadcasting your customer? That's what an agency's for. They hired you. Tell me how you guys navigate that.
Well, I think it's easy to walk into I was going to say it's easy to have a client walk in and say, I want to do everything. But if they don't have the budget for it, starting out especially, you can't just pick everything. So if a company is like, they'll perform better on social media versus Google Ads or Bing, or maybe they'll perform better using AI and organic. So I think you have to look at the customer and see where they're going to perform the best, get the best audience, and impressions doesn't always mean conversions. I think sometimes getting less conversions quantify more into conversions. And one of the questions I always ask somebody is like, if I gave you 1 million visitors today, would you take that over 100 good leads or sales leads? And you'd be surprised how many people would say, I'll take the 1 million. Well, that doesn't mean you're going to get to a lead that could go to a conversion. So I think you got to find out what avenue is going to work for them the best to get that conversion. And then when they start making more money, especially when you're talking about smaller and medium-sized companies, once they start converting and they're starting to really trust you and they're starting to make money, then move into the other aspects of other types of marketing that you could do for them.
Yeah, on our side of the fence, we kind of early on started with our sort of content distribution methodology, which was really, I mean, before AI, it was pretty labor intensive. It's a little bit easier now, with giving sort of AI directives, but it's like turning a long form blog post into multiple short form assets on social media in order to, potentially start gaining more eyeballs in different channels before that little lull period of where, you start to see the organic rankings come into play. This is purely from a client perspective. They don't want to wait for, the whatever 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks it takes to have a piece, or longer, to have a piece rank well. So, okay, let's distribute it in little pieces across LinkedIn blog or newsletter, a Medium post, a medium.com post. If it's a local company, sometimes like a patch.com post. So we're kind of hitting it from different angles. And that's not to say that everywhere is going to be of quality, but it kind of goes back to Bryan's point that different platforms have different audiences of different kind of quality levels. But what we wanted to do was, rather than sitting and kind of being like, okay, we published this blog post, let's watch it, kind of, let's watch the compound growth come in. We wanted to figure out, how do we start to get some eyeballs in different areas? And it just became a part of our workflow to turn like a long form blog post into whatever 30 short form pieces of content across different social media platforms, or just content platforms in general. And then the battle became, how do we make them unique? And that's where AI has honestly helped turn like an incredibly labor intensive process into something that's a little bit easier, because you can give it directives as to what you want instead of having to sit there and rack your brain of like, okay, this should not sound the same. I don't want to just repurpose this content because it needs to serve some sort of legit, purpose on a different platform, and not have Google just view it as duplicate content.
It's really fascinating how the two of your comments there blend together so incredibly well. Like, Bryan, if you're talking about really focusing in on what the customer can afford to do and creating maybe one really good piece of content, but then slicing and dicing it to make it useful across multiple platforms to make them visible and kind of build a brand presence that's like early on, that's like the most cost-effective way to expand that brand presence. So if you know where to place it well, that's fascinating.
Well, I have two acquaintances that I didn't do the work on. There are more people, friends that I know that created multi-million-dollar businesses off of doing like video shorts. That's all they did. And they tried the website, they tried everything else, and it was like either slow or it wasn't really performing well. And then when they started doing these video shorts, you look at these videos like, really, people buy from those videos? That's crazy, right? Like, how does that happen? But, different audience for a different age, different, different culture, everything. Everybody's different what sells them. And so when you make that approach, some things work for some companies, but not everything works for everybody sometimes.
And even like I'm similarly had that like epiphany of wow, people, video shorts really work like this. I started messing around with AI and found like a piece of software that built an avatar of me with my voice, and it just took like a couple 10-minute videos of me and built an avatar, which of course it's not quite foolproof yet today, but watching examples of like an AI avatar mixed with B-roll footage, I'm like, you can't really tell the difference. And I'm sure people buy from like Bumble, for example, created like a 30-second TikTok ad based off of AI avatars. The outside, like the personal, like core, I feel like it's terrible, honestly. Like overall, I hate that the world has come to the AIification of things, but I'm gonna leverage it as much as I can to be successful within the marketing world. But I do think to a degree sometimes that stuff does dilute the quality.
Yeah. And real quick, Corey mentioned Medium, and I'm working with the big publisher on Medium, and the articles that are published on Medium get a lot of engagement. They get a ton of it, but then we try to distribute that content across other channels. Some social works, it's okay, but we don't see the engagement levels and interaction as we do on Medium, on Medium rather than other sources as well. So it's like, I think the understanding the unique value proposition of a brand or product is definitely key. Understanding what's unique, where's the subject matter expertise, understanding what channels perform the best based on where the audience is and where the best audience is going to absorb that content the best, and then measuring and performing the results to understand, okay, we should double down on this one source because Medium is the place to be. So let's just focus 60, 70, or even 80% of our efforts within that one source because we're generating a lot of good interaction, engagement, or revenue, whatever that may be, on if it's ad through running ads on there as well. So we focus on that strategy as well, in terms of focus on what works, double down in those areas, don't go too wide, because mass distribution could mean just a lot of wasted efforts with just a lot of thin metrics, whereas focusing on the few platforms that really work and that resonate where your audience is, I think are definitely, it's definitely key.
Well, I think too, just kind of going sideways with a little bit, if you're not doing AI these days, AIO, GAO, all the whatever you want, if you're not doing it, you're invisible. And it's not like ranking. You don't rank on AI. It's retrieval. You're out there. It's pulling out, comparing you to your competitors, similar products. You're going out. There's a lot of aspects that go with it. And as AI keeps growing, I mean, it's reaching 50%, and it's getting it more and more because people are getting the answers they're looking for. They're literally getting the answers they're looking for right away. So if you're not setting up your clients even from the beginning, we're talking about schema, LMS text, you go through all the things that you have to set up coding wise, then you have to go through the process of saying, okay, what kind of, what are they looking for? What's the user intent? What kind of metrics are they looking for? And so deciding which avenue that you're going to focus on. And I think as we go through, we're looking at, well, what's working for social media and what's working for Google Ads. A lot of times as I look at people that are going through like ads, for example, they're getting killed by the variants. Variants are making it hard for people to get good results out of some of these ads sometimes. So finding other avenues that would work, that's not going to cost us so much and be much more effective. I think AI is really, honestly, people are going to do it. You got to start focusing now, because if you're invisible now, your competitors aren't, and your competitors are doing it now these days.
There's Corey, did you have something?
No, I was just saying I very much agree with that.
Yeah, as you were talking, Corey, talking about your avatar, I was thinking about like how we've seen like social media influencers that are AIs completely, and how that's like working. And one thing that's come up pretty often in the podcast is authenticity, and people value authenticity but it feels like the majority of people don't necessarily look for authenticity. And so those that are adopting AI strategies today seem to be, and I'll back up just a little bit. I had an agency that came on that talked about TikTok, and that he was recommended really early on to get on TikTok. And he was like, I don't see this going anywhere, and didn't necessarily make the jump into TikTok for his customers. And then for so many, it blew up and made their customers or their companies super successful. And I think that there was a lot of people at that time who would have agreed that they didn't care to get on TikTok because it just seemed trendy. And with AI, I think that there's a large majority of people that don't think it's trendy. And now it's like you feel like you have to grasp some real estate to establish yourself pretty early. My biggest question, and I don't think we'll have time to really answer this, but it comes down to the publisher aspect of content and whether AI is really taking that and learning from it to use it for themselves, or whether you're really helping your customer long term by establishing that brand in AI, and whether or not like that zero click aspect of what could evolve is, are we feeding AI too much? Is there any way to combat that? I might not ask it today because we're out of time. I might create a post and have you guys respond back on like LinkedIn, because I am curious how you're going to navigate one, I think we've all agreed that we're adopting AI. It's absolutely a part of our success and your customer success, but whether or not it's going to damage the potential for your customers to get visibility if you're training it too well on what your customers do, and that it just answers questions. I know that there's a path down there that leads to, it has to convert at some point to our customers, and they need to provide more than just an answer to a question, because ultimately that's all ChatGPT can do, or other LLMs. But I'll ask that on online, and you guys can respond back as you choose to. I appreciate you guys being here. This has actually been a really a more detailed podcast than many of you record, so I really appreciate your insights. Thank you for being a guest on SEO On Air.